So thank you all for coming. I'm Rob Manfredi with Bamboo Solutions. Today we're going to talk about SharePoint alerts. I've got my screen shared. We're going to run through a quick webinar. We're going to do a little overview on what to do now that SharePoint alerts are gone, right? So we're going to introduce you to Alert Plus, which is the enterprise alert engine for SharePoint Online. We're going to do a 10-minute overview, a quick website walkthrough and pricing, and then a live demo. So thank you all for coming. All right, so there we are. Why Alert Plus is the first 10 minutes, why native SharePoint Alerts retirement creates an enterprise gap, and why Power Automate is not always the right replacement for it. We'll do a website walkthrough, review the positioning, pricing, some deployment options, and some migration options, and then a live demo. So we're going to get through this quickly and efficiently so that you get the information you need and what the next steps will be. Okay, so the gap. SharePoint notifications did not disappear. The native engine did. So organizations still need timely, governed, meaningful SharePoint notifications. So Microsoft has retired the native alerts. The retirement of the native alerts created a practical problem. Users still expect alerts on lists and library activity. Administrators still need visibility, supportability, and governance over those alerts. Business users need readable emails with context and tokens about what has changed. And then the enterprise needs to provide this information consistently across many sites, departments, regions, et cetera, et cetera. So while the alert has been retired, the need for alerts has not been retired, which is why we have Alerts Plus. So the build it all and Power Automate argument over there on the right, Power Automate, while is an amazing tool and we use it on our consulting side all day long, it is not right for just creating alerts against lists and libraries. Flows can become fragmented and hard to support. Each alert pattern can require design, testing, and maintenance. Governance gets harder as your alert volume keeps growing and growing and growing. And then run usage of those alerts, especially if they're scanning through a library of 5,000 items, can become expensive. And then you've got ownership changing, connectors changing, et cetera, et cetera. So what Alert Plus gives teams a purpose-built alerting layer instead of rebuilding an alert platform one flow at a time. It's really just not the right way. And with our pricing, even if you've got 100 alerts, the pricing is much better than trying to create and manage alerts from user requests. So let's put that power back into your users' hands. So why clients choose Alert Plus, right? It's a product, not a project, right? It replaces retired SharePoint alerts with a governed alerting layer without rebuilding every scenario as a custom flow, right? You get faster pilot, you don't have flow sprawl, and you really can control what's going on out there. So purpose-built, designed specifically for SharePoint lists, library folders, and item level alerts. Alert Me is used for self-service, so users can create and manage their own alerts. And then the Alert Administrator product is for power users to either create alerts for other users or for IT to take a look at all the alerts that have been created to provide first line of support. The alerts themselves are meaningful messages, right? We've got tokens, we've got alert templates that can be customized to your organization. We've got conditional alerts, we've got ASAP delivery, we've got summary alerts as well that can be sent once a week, every day, et cetera, et cetera. The product scales, right? So we use Graph subscription and Azure SQL backends for higher alert volumes. We're currently managing over 50,000 alerts, and we're doing so consistently with really 100% delivery rate. So that's really hard to do when you scale these kind of things using just Power Automate. And then we've got some deployment choices. While the web parts for Alert Me and Alert Admin run in your SharePoint environment, the back end, the Azure services, can easily be hosted by us, which is included in the price. Or if you're in a highly regulated environment and you want to run those Azure services in your Azure environment, we can actually push those into your environment so the entire product is hosted within your M365 tenant. So standardized SharePoint alerting across the enterprise without rebuilding an alert platform one flow at a time. All right, so one platform, self-service, centralized admin, and tenant configuration. So the three web parts that come with it on top of the Azure backend is Alert Me. Again, that's where end users create, view, and manage their personal alerts directly in SharePoint. You can do alerts against lists, libraries, item level alerts, folder level alerts. They can be configured to be sent ASAP or as summary alerts. And those users can manage those without any IT involvement. They can create them and manage them without any IT involvement. The Alert Admin product works more like a web part, where admins can create, assign, standardize, and troubleshoot alerts across the environment. Standardize, that is, you can create your templates for them as well. So it's central administration. You've got assigned people that can access this and see all the alerts. And you can also take a look at the run history of the alerts and see if an item has disappeared, why an error happened, things like that. Tenant Manager is another part of this solution, but it's actually a solution for all of our web parts. It's the centralized licensing, but in Alerts Plus instance, it is the tenant level configuration for backend email delivery, service accounts, and security controls. So, customizing your from address for the email, setting up your own mail server if you don't want to use our SendGrid, or creating your own SendGrid and the like. So there's lots of things that are sort of managed within Tenant Manager to make Alert Me and Alert Admin run. So the modern architecture we've created is based on changes within lists and libraries. All of the alert configurations are stored in SQL in our back end. We've implemented now subscription-based notifications through Microsoft Graph. So what that does is the scaling of what we've built allows us to listen for changes rather than polling each list in the library for changes, right? So we only need to scan through the lists that have had a change. That's something we work closely with Microsoft on to develop, and it's really efficient. So you've got SharePoint Online, right, which has your list, libraries, items, and folders. The Graph subscription will let us know when one of the lists and libraries we're subscribed to, and we subscribe to them automatically when an alert is configured against a list or library, will let us know if there's a change that has happened. Then our Azure environment evaluates the rules and builds the notification against what was changed based on the way the alert has been configured, right? And then we send that out through SendGrid in our hosted environment. If it's, you can have your own SendGrid. You can also hook it up to SMTP if you'd like. And of course, if it's within your environment, you'll configure your own email settings there as well. So what we've recently released is this Graph subscription service configured with our Azure SQL backend, right? So that's designed to reduce the polling dependencies, improve scalability, isolate tenant data in SQL, and really create a stronger foundation for enterprise deployments. Again, we're talking scale here because we've got some customers with, 10, 20,000 alerts, configured alerts, let alone how many alerts are actually running every day and being triggered, right? So, kind of to reiterate, right? We started off as a replacement for SharePoint alerts, and now what we have matured into is really an enterprise alert engine. So let's go through some recent releases and then what's coming out in September this month. Actually, this month in August, not September. So the subscription service and SQL backend, we've talked enough about that. So that's helped us scale, reduce the CPU usage, and really manage tons and tons of alerts. The upcoming release in August, not September, is the security and API hardening, right? So we've added tokenized API calls from Alert Me and Alert Admin to the APIs in Azure. They used to be just secured with unique IDs that were not known, but now we've actually got token API calls. We are adding an optional recipient permission validation that is set through Bamboo Tenant Manager for your install across your tenant. And we're going to get into what that is. And then within Bamboo Tenant Manager, we're actually giving you more self-service control to add additional service accounts based on your alert volume. You can manage your own client ID and client secrets directly in there to make sure that we can read your list data. And then the credentials for those service accounts as we rotate to prevent throttling and to handle the volume that's out there. So the key takeaway of this is Alert Plus is actively evolving to an enterprise security, scale, and operational control for your alerting engine. So really good stuff. Again, real simple to use for your users, some complex things going on in the back end so that we can scale to where we need to be. So let's talk about this new feature, the enhanced security. Recipient permissions are essentially checked when the alert is triggered, right? So this is an option. It's part of the product, but you turn it on or off, right? So what we've got here, right, is an alert triggers right off of a list library. So again, we get a notification that something's changed. We evaluate the changes against the configured alerts. If one triggers, right, we assemble the alert, right, to be sent out through SendGrid. So when the security feature is off, we're supporting sort of a broader notification scenario, right? So you can put in distribution lists, you can put in external users for situational awareness. SharePoint still controls access to the underlying content link. So if you've got a link back to a document or a link back to the list within the alert, if a user clicks on it, they don't have permission, SharePoint takes care of that, right? However, if you turn the security feature on, we actually validate each of the recipients in the alert to see if they still have permissions to that list or library, right? If they don't, we remove the unauthorized recipients, and then the alert is actually configured only to those who still have permissions to view the list or item. And while we're securing, it's always secure that you can't get to it because SharePoint takes care of that. You may put some token information into an alert that you don't want to share with people who no longer have permission to the underlying list, right? So that's the security issue that you need to evaluate on when you want to turn this on or off, right? So really good there for enterprise security. The last thing I want to touch on is the deployment choices. Without really making an architecture or sales into the sales pitch, right? So the fastest way to pilot and get alerts up and running is to use our hosted Azure service. Again, we're not storing any of your data. We're storing the configurations of the alerts. The client IDs and secrets are all stored only visible by the actual worker jobs, not by people. That back end is operated, monitored, and updated by us. We use SendGrid, which is part of the price, to send the emails out. And then there's a logical tenant isolation within our SQL database. Now, this whole Azure service can actually be hosted by you. It's available for customers with internal Azure hosting requirements. We can assist with the installation and support. Customers control the Azure resources in the environment, and it's really useful for regulated or policy-driven environments, or if policy-driven, like we have to store everything in Azure Europe, right? Or we're a federal group and we want everything in our FedRAMP GCC high Azure environment or something like that. So really flexible on the deployments of the back end. The front end is still the same. Most customers choose the Bamboo hosted for speed. We do have, I think, 8 or 10 customers that are running their own Azure environment at this point. So we're happy to do whichever one makes the most sense. So the native engine is retired. Your alerting strategy does not have to be, right? Pretty nice. Recommended next steps. You can start a pilot. We can migrate your high value alerts from SharePoint alerts if they have not been deleted yet. And then we can expand Alert Plus as the standard SharePoint online alert engine, right? So with that, let's jump over to a quick walkthrough of the website. And I'm going to go ahead and let me get things ready and we'll bring them right over. Obviously, there's no questions because you are all AIs on here today. Okay. So on our website, bamboosolutions.com, you can see we've got Alert Plus everywhere, but we do have 20 products that are fully supported within SharePoint Online for better knowledge bases. We've got a great search product. We've got just tons of products that do lots of cool things. Even the simplified things of like better printing of list data and things like that. But what we're focusing on is Alert Plus. So we're going to go here. The blue stuff is all of our online stuff. The green is our on-premise, for which we support 2016, 2019, and subscription edition. So let's go to Alert Plus. The website itself is pretty much reiterating what we just kind of went through with some screenshots. We've got a great review by SharePoint Dougie of Alert Plus in there, and also Power Automate and rules. Here's some migration information, which we can do. We've done lots of migrations of SharePoint alerts into Alert Plus so that you can retain the information you already have. And then down here is our pricing. So let's go take a quick look at pricing. Essentially, there's a platform fee that comes with a certain amount of configured alerts you can have in your environment, and it's based on your customer size. So if you're a small business under 50 users, we've got some really low pricing that gets you in there, and you can support up to 500 active configured alerts. Active alerts are not alerts that are triggered. They're alerts that you have configured, right? And they can trigger 10,000 times. It doesn't matter to us. The tier one is up to 2,000 SharePoint Online users, or your employee size, essentially, which is $5,500, and you get 2,000 active alerts. If you're up to 10,000 users, it's $7,200 a year, or 73. And you can see the pricing there. And you can see that we increase the number of active alerts based on your organization size. Now, you can add additional alerts that are configured by looking here. If we're hosting them, you can add another 10,000 alerts for $4,800, another 5,000, 2,000, or 500. So it just adds on to your current fee by looking there. If you're hosting it in your platform, we also give you these number that will support in your Azure environment. But you can also add additional at a much lower rate because you're really absorbing the Azure costs of having additional stuff. So this just adds additional support cost to your subscription. So that's why it's much lower. All right. If that's complicated, you can just use our little shopper. You can pick your small business, click the next button. You can say, I want Bamboo to host it. And you can see you got 500 alerts, everything's included, and it builds a little pricing there. It's $14.90 a year, 500 alerts, and off you go, right? If you wanted to add additional alerts, let's say you want another 2,000 alerts, then your price moves to $14.90 plus the 1,200 for the additional capacity, so it's $26.90 a year. $26.90 a year for having configured 2,500 alerts, that's $1 alert, which is ridiculous when you look at the price of managing flows out there. And again, this is not anything to do with how many alerts are actually triggered. This is configured alerts. So that's a lot of capacity for $1 a year per alert. Okay. Let me move this to the side and we're going to start our demo. Whoops. Let's go bring that. Let's go ahead and bring this. And then let me go ahead and bring this in. All right. So the first thing I want to take a look at is I've got a document library in a SharePoint Online site. You can see it's a nice modern document library. It's got a bunch of folders in here. And as a user, I would like to be notified when something is added to this holiday promo folder, right? So I've got a couple ways of doing that. I can click on the folder and come up to my ribbon bar and I see add an alert. I can also do it right here in the context menu, add an alert, right? And if I do that, alert me pops up. So when you add alert me to your app catalog, it is instantly deployed to all of your lists and libraries in both the context menu and the ribbon bar. So we can see here that it is a folder level alert, and it shows the user that we're going to trigger off of the Holiday Promo 2016. I can choose to trigger off of items in the folder or items in the folder and the subfolders right within the holiday, which was good. And then I've got my trigger types: created, modified, created or modified, meets a condition, or is deleted. So let's say I'm just interested when anything is dropped into this folder, I want to get an alert. And I've got two choices. I can say I want it sent immediately, or I want it a summary. So really for the holiday, I just want a summary once a week. Every Friday, let's say at 5 p.m., I'm going to alert of all the things that were created over and over again. So then I've got to actually create my alert. So the to field is automatically filled out. I can put in distribution lists, I can put in extra tokens, I can put in CCs, and the like, but it's already done. And then I've got essentially my alert subject, which is the email subject. I've got within the body a little header, the repeating body, which is all of the items that are added, and then a footer, and then I save it with a name and description. So rather than typing all of this in, I can actually just populate it from a template. And what this does is it grabs the templates out of the Azure environment. We standardize a set of templates for you out of the box, but those templates can be edited with your logo and any other information you want. And essentially there is a template for each trigger type, and each trigger type for a library, or each trigger type against a list, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are actually 10 templates, 5 for libraries, 5 for lists, for each type there. So what that does is it says, all right, Alert Plus activity summary, the following new documents are added since the previous summary. So since we did item created, it put in the words added, right? If it's created or modified, it's going to be created or modified, right? So that's why we have different templates. And then we've got a link to the site name, and then the list name right at the top. Now, what repeats over and over is the name of the file, who created it with the author, the item ID, and a link to the item. Now, you can, of course, edit this, add more information, but this is going to repeat because it's a summary email for all of the items that were created since the last time this alert ran. And then we've got a little end of Alert Plus summary. You could put a link to your help desk down there, right? So that's sort of how that's built. And then we've created sort of the name. So I'm going to add in here holiday promo with documents added, and then sends an email summary when the document has been added. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say that. So what's happening now is that configuration is being sent to Azure, right? So that Azure is either in our backend, right? Configures it in the SQL. And then at the time of the summary, which is Fridays at 5, that email will essentially have received whether something has been changed within that library. That's the listening piece, the subscription. If something has changed, we go check the Delta records. We look what's changed. If the configuration of what I made matches what was changed, we then assemble the alert and we send it out, right? What's nice is, as a user, I also have the ability to manage my alerts. So I'm going to see all of my alerts that I've created for this document library. So I've created a lot because I do this demo, but you can see I've got the last run is success. I've got the names. I can see the list was out there. I can search for them, right? So if I wanted to look for holiday, I can see here on the title, it's found holiday, 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 right? What's nice is I can also see if something didn't work. If it said failure, I can see what happened, right? So let's say for an item level alert, the item's been deleted. Obviously, it's going to error because the item is no longer there, or if the folder's been deleted, or if the list has been deleted, or something like that. So that gives me a good thing. I can go in here and edit it. I can delete it if it's no longer appropriate. And I'm doing this as a user without any involvement from IT. Pretty straightforward, pretty cool, and really puts the power back in your users' hands. Similarly, for lists, libraries, we can also go down to a specific item where I can create an alert against this item, right? This one Excel spreadsheet. And of course, the only trigger types are modified or meets a condition, right? So if somebody modifies this folder, I want to get an email immediately. I can just populate it from a template. Gives me the information, and I can just say this is my Excel spreadsheet. So I can put some detail for my alert, and then I'm going to save it. So really, with just 2 clicks, I've created an item level alert when this thing is modified to send me an email immediately if something has happened here. So very cool. The same thing happens for lists, right? So I can add an alert for a list. And then I could scan this list and I can look for items created, modified, created, modified, or meets a condition. Now, just to get a little deeper, the meets a condition allows you to set up essentially some rules, right? So really, I only want to know when something, well, let's say it's created, and I want to add the condition that only when the customer type equals customer, right? Or something like that. So this way, the trigger is not going to the alert's not going to trigger off of every item that's added, right? Or it could be, let's say, a number. I don't know if I have a number. Do I have a number in here? We could say, oh, even created by, right? I only want to, if Rob Manfredi creates something, that's when I want to get triggered. Right, so we can do that. We can do a little people picker. So only when an item is created by Rob Manfredi am I going to get a trigger, right? Pretty cool. Allows you to reduce the amount of alerts you get, and users will start using this more and more as they get used to the product. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is the alert admin. And the alert admin works more like a web part. So rather than it being automatically deployed to every list and library, it's a web part you add to a page. Now, if I'm just a regular user and I come to alert admin, I'm only going to see my alerts, just like an alert me. If I have elevated permissions, which is like a site collection owner or higher, I will see all the alerts from my organization. So you can see, I can see VJs, I can see Mats, I can see if I'm looking for, let's say Latrice calls and said, I can't get this alert to work. I can come in here, look for Latrice's. I can go and edit one of her alerts, and I can see what she's been doing, and then help her configure it. And you can see down here, it's assigned to her, which is nice. That allows me to create an alert and actually assign it to a user so they can see it in their my alerts, right? So it becomes essentially their alert after that to manage moving forward. And that's a really nice thing. You can see here, I can save whatever alert I configure as a new template. It will replace the template that's already in for when an item is modified against a list, a library. So that's why it's in the alert admin. So essentially you just load the existing alert, right? Which I'm not going to do because this is her alert, and then modify it and then save it. And you've updated essentially your alert template that way. Pretty straightforward and the like. And that's the alert admin product. Super useful, good first line of support, allows users to develop alerts for other people. And you can also check to see if somebody says my alert's not running, what's going on before you open up a ticket with us. Of course, we're here to help as well. All right, that's the end of our thing. What we would suggest is I'm going to send an email with notes from today, as well as a link to the recording. And what we would like to do is meet one-on-one or help you start a trial of the product, which is fully supported on our back end for 30 days, so that users can experience having the ability to create and manage their own alerts without any IT involvement. And you can trust that you're on a system that can support your entire enterprise. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.